their Tesla a month or so ago when an update was pushed through, and suddenly a bunch of Teslas started mistaking shadows on the road for cars parked in front of them and slamming on their brakes on the highway. That was a problem with an overtrained AI system, basically, which the engineers at Tesla clearly thought was ready to go, and it wasn't, and that that could potentially have disastrous outcomes. So here's some cases where we are making use of artificial intelligence in the image processing workflow, and these are what I refer to as really solid use cases for this sort of technique. Segmentation of normal tissues from the body. For instance, we do a lot of work with measuring and segmenting the liver, measuring and segmenting the spleen for various types of diseases. Again, liver and the spleen in most people are in the same place, have roughly the same shape. They may be larger or smaller, but their characteristics are similar. And so you can train a neural network to do a really good job of automatically segmenting the liver, automatically segmenting the spleen. Similar for the brain. The brain is a really good case for lots of different types of image processing techniques for the reasons I explained earlier. It's a really good use case for AI as well. And neural networks are a nice alternative to FreeSurfer, again, working to a similar effect, but taking the burden of processing from each individual case that we're reviewing, taking a ton of time, to the training taking a ton of time, and then we can review a bunch of cases relatively quickly. So those are good use cases for this technique. More challenging use cases that we and I know other groups are working on are things like looking at lung lesions. Now, lung lesions, in terms of looking at tumors, this is sort of the lowest hanging fruit, because the lungs obviously are sort of mostly airspace. So on a CT scan, they're really dark. Tumors show up as sort of bright, very dense regions within this dark background. So tumors in the lungs tend to be pretty distinctive, and that makes them a little more amenable to a lot of different types of image processing techniques, including neural network-based techniques. And there are a number of papers out in the literature from groups who are using AI systems to look for lung lesions specifically. I mentioned multiple sclerosis lesions. We see this on the right. Again, they don't have the advantage that we see with normal anatomy of the lesions all showing up sort of in the same place for every person. But MS lesions do actually have some sort of anatomical consistency. You frequently see them around the horns of the ventricles. They're white matter lesions, so they're always embedded in the white matter of the brain, which again is fairly consistent in its structure from person to person. And they do have this distinctive sort of appearance across different types of scans. We're looking at a FLAIR scan here, and you can see those bright spots are in fact T2 hyperintense MS lesions. But they appear consistent on FLAIR T2, T1 to the extent that it's a challenging but a pretty doable case for this sort of processing. Now, where things get a little more difficult is things like general oncology, so looking for tumors. So there are relatively sizable tumors in both the images here. If you're not a radiologist, I suspect you're probably struggling to figure out what and where they are. And the reason that you're doing that is the same reason, although probably everyone could see where the lung lesion was on the previous slide, is the reason why this is difficult for AI systems. So in order to identify tumors in the body, essentially you have to know where all the normal stuff is in the body and exactly what it looks like, and then you look for anything that's not quite right. And so your knowledge, your training has to encompass the full variety of the way any sort of normal anatomy can appear in all the different parts of the body. And that's just a tremendous amount of knowledge. It takes years for a human to gain the knowledge they need to do this sort of analysis. I guess theoretically you could potentially train a neural network to do this sort of work, but it would take hundreds and thousands or millions of properly, fully labeled whole body scans, where you label every single organ, every single fold of the intestines, every single crease of the liver, Every lymph node has to be all properly labeled, and then feed those all as training data into a neural network. If you're able to do that, you could potentially have a broad enough training set to allow it to find any sort of anomalous structures, which is really what you're looking for in general oncology. But that would be just an absolutely tremendous training burden, and I don't know that anyone is ready to take that on at this time. I certainly haven't seen anything out there that is even moving in this direction yet. So a question this might lead you to when we're talking about artificial intelligence is artificial intelligence going to kill us all? We mentioned Tesla earlier, that the guy running Tesla seems to think AI is going to murder us all. This question usually leads to ideas of sort of like the Terminator and a giant mountain